The unthinkable act. The sun had barely risen over Earth, casting a warm golden light across the quiet city streets. People were starting their day, going about their routines without any sign of what was to come. A little girl, no more than 7 years old, skipped along the sidewalk, humming a tune as she headed toward the park. Her name was Lily. She loved to play outside, to chase the birds and watch the clouds drift by. The world around her was calm, peaceful, safe. But that peace was about to shatter in the blink of an eye. In the sky above, something strange was happening. It began with a small flash of light, so quick that no one could make sense of it. Then, without warning, a series of glowing ships appeared, darting across the sky like streaks of fire. Their movements were too fast for Earth's defenses to react. The ships were sleek, silent, and powerful, far beyond anything humanity had ever seen. The sky filled with a hum, a low, vibrating sound that seemed to shake the very air around them. Lily paused, looking up, her eyes wide in confusion. The bright light from above reflected off her innocent face as she took a step back, unsure of what was happening. Then, in an instant, the flash of light returned. This time, it wasn't just a flash. It was a beam, powerful and unyielding. It struck down from the alien ships and engulfed Lily in a beam of pure energy. She vanished, lifted off the ground as if she weighed nothing at all, disappearing into the unknown sky. The streets fell silent. People looked around in disbelief. Where did Lily go? What had just happened? The world had no answers. The alien ships hovered in place, their forms massive and imposing against the blue sky. For several long minutes, there was only silence. Then, as quickly as they had arrived, they sent a message, a broadcast that rang out across every television and radio channel on Earth. The world heard a voice, cold and unfeeling, speaking in a language no one had ever heard before. The message was brief, but it carried a weight that no one could ignore. We have taken one of your own, a child. You have 1 day to surrender, or you will face the consequences. Do not attempt to interfere. The voice faded, and the transmission cut off. It was the first sign that humanity was no longer in control of its fate. In the days that followed, panic spread like wildfire across the globe. Governments scrambled to understand what had happened. What race of aliens had the power to take a child from Earth without a trace? What were their intentions? The United Nations held emergency meetings, but they were lost in confusion. No one knew how to respond. Every nation on Earth had military forces on high alert, but what good would they do against an enemy with technology far beyond anything humanity had ever imagined? President Elizabeth Moore of the United States made a public address to the nation, her voice shaking with a mix of anger and fear. We will find this child. We will find who took her, and we will make them pay. Her words were strong, but deep down, she knew the fight ahead would be unlike anything the world had ever seen. Across the world, people gathered in shock. Families huddled together, watching the news in horror, unable to comprehend what had just happened. How could anyone just take a child like that? What kind of enemies were they dealing with? But one thing was certain. Earth was not prepared for this. In military bunkers and secret government meetings, leaders struggled to formulate a plan. The child was their first priority, but so many questions remained unanswered. Why did the aliens take her? Was she special? Was she important to them in some way? What did this mean for Earth's future? The next day, another message came through. This time, it was clearer, more direct. The same cold voice spoke again. We have taken your child to send a message. You are nothing compared to us. You have no right to resist. Earth's leaders were paralyzed. They knew they could not ignore this challenge. But how could they fight against an enemy that could wipe them out with the flick of a switch? For days, the world was in a state of shock. People feared that they might never see their loved ones again, that this was the beginning of the end. Fear and uncertainty gripped every corner of Earth. The fear was not just of the aliens, but of what would happen next. Could they really stand up to such a powerful force? Would they lose everything? The news spread like wildfire, and soon it was not just governments, but the people themselves who were organizing. Petitions circulated, and people from all walks of life demanded that something be done. There were calls for action, for the military to take charge, for the world to unite. But amidst all the chaos, there was one question that lingered in the minds of everyone who heard the broadcast. Who were these aliens, and why had they chosen Earth? It was the start of a war no one expected, a war that would change the course of history forever. Earth had no idea how to fight back, but one thing was certain: they would not stand by and let their world be taken without a fight. The aliens had taken a child. Now, Earth was determined to take action. They had no idea what lay ahead, but they were ready to find out. The battle for Earth had begun. The world had never been in a situation like this before. The invasion was sudden, unprovoked, and left no room for hesitation. Every nation, every government had to make a choice. Were they going to fight back, or were they going to accept this strange, terrifying new reality? In the United States, President Elizabeth Moore convened with her closest advisors, military leaders, and intelligence officers. They gathered in a high-security bunker, surrounded by monitors flashing with real-time data. The air was thick with tension as each person weighed the gravity of their situation. No one had ever faced an enemy like this. No one knew how to stop them. "Do we have any idea who they are?" President Moore asked, her voice steady but filled with urgency. General Marcus Holden, the head of the military, shook his head. "We've never encountered anything like this before. Their ships are beyond anything we've ever seen. We tried to track their movement, but they move faster than our systems can detect. And their technology, it's like nothing we've ever developed or even dreamed of." Moore stared at the large digital map on the screen. Earth's defenses were scattered, outdated, and they were facing an enemy that seemed to have no weakness. The alien ships had not fired a single shot, yet their presence was enough to bring the entire world to its knees. The capture of a single child, Lily, was a symbolic act, a declaration of power, and the entire planet had felt the shockwave. "Do we know why they took her?" Moore asked, trying to cling to whatever bit of logic they could grasp. "We've been trying to decrypt their messages," replied Maria Chen, a brilliant cryptologist. "But the language they use is so complex. We haven't cracked it yet. However, there's something more important. We've received another signal." A hush fell over the room. "Another signal." Maria continued. "It's a coded transmission. From what we can gather, it's not a threat this time. It's a challenge." The room erupted in murmurs. A challenge. What did that even mean? President Moore stood up, her mind racing. A challenge could be anything. An ultimatum, a test of strength, or something far worse. "What's the message?" Moore asked. Maria hesitated before pressing a button on the console. A strange, otherworldly sound echoed through the room. It was a voice, cold and unyielding, the same one that had spoken when Lily was taken. "This is your warning," the voice said. "Do not attempt to pursue. Do not engage. Your actions will determine whether you live or die." The voice went silent, and the room fell into a heavy silence. It was clear now. The aliens were not simply invaders. They were calculating, manipulative, and had no interest in negotiation. The stakes were high. If they didn't respond correctly, humanity would be crushed. "What does this mean?" General Holden asked, his voice grave. "Are they testing us, or are they ready to wipe us out?" Moore didn't have an answer. She had a sinking feeling that they had already crossed a point of no return. There was no going back now. As the days passed, the entire world watched the unfolding crisis with a mix of fear and disbelief. News outlets ran stories 24/7, covering every new development. But for every piece of information they gathered, it felt like they were still in the dark. Governments and military leaders were working around the clock to prepare for the worst, but no one knew what that worst might be. In Russia, President Dmitry Ivanov called an emergency summit with his cabinet. "We cannot allow this. We cannot simply give up our children to these invaders," he said, his face hard with determination. Across Europe, leaders were having similar discussions. Should they work together with the United States? Should they launch a coordinated strike? But the more they discussed, the more they realized that Earth's military technology was simply too far behind. They could barely defend themselves from the unknown alien forces, let alone go on the offensive. In Asia, governments were in crisis mode, with cities on lockdown and citizens terrified of what the future might hold. People protested in the streets, demanding action. They wanted answers. They wanted revenge. But in the midst of it all, a quiet understanding spread across the world. Something had to be done. Earth could not bow down to these invaders. Humanity was not built to give up, to lie down, to be conquered without a fight. On the military front, Earth's forces began to mobilize. It wasn't much, but it was something. Troops were dispatched to key locations, preparing for an assault if the aliens made any aggressive moves. They knew they had no hope of defeating the aliens with their current technology, but they also knew that doing nothing would be worse than failure. In secret laboratories, scientists worked around the clock, trying to find some way to counter the aliens' advanced weapons. No one was sure how long they had before Earth's first wave of attacks would be met with devastating retaliation, but they couldn't afford to wait. In every corner of Earth, the same questions hung in the air. What did these aliens want? Why had they taken a child? And most importantly, what would Earth do next? The clock was ticking, and time was running out. A new war had begun, not of Earth's choosing, but one they would have to fight with everything they had. It was no longer just about one child. It was about the survival of humanity itself, and every decision made in the coming days would shape the future of the entire planet. Earth had no choice but to fight. It was the only option left. The world had woken up to a nightmare. What started as a single, unthinkable act, an alien race taking a human child, had quickly escalated into something much darker. The aliens were not just invaders. They were challengers, testing humanity's strength, testing Earth's resolve. And now, Earth had no choice but to respond. Across the globe, military leaders were in emergency meetings. The first step was clear. Earth needed to prepare for the worst. But no one truly understood what the worst was. The unknown alien race had the upper hand in technology, speed, and intelligence. Humanity was not prepared. And yet, they were expected to fight. In Washington, D.C., President Elizabeth Moore stood in front of the Global Security Council, her face etched with both determination and concern. It was a moment of decision, a moment that would define the future of Earth. The room was filled with the most brilliant minds in military strategy, technology, and politics. The fate of humanity was in their hands. "We don't have the luxury of time," President Moore said, her voice steady but with an underlying intensity. "We need to take immediate action. We cannot let them think we are weak, that we will allow this to happen again." General Marcus Holden, one of the most respected military leaders on Earth, nodded. He had spent years planning for potential extraterrestrial threats, but this was unlike anything he had ever imagined. The aliens didn't just have superior technology. They had something far more dangerous: the ability to manipulate fear. "We've been monitoring their ships, their movements," General Holden said. "But they've made no aggressive moves. It's almost as if they're waiting for us to make the first move. It's a trap. If we attack, we risk triggering something catastrophic. If we do nothing, we risk losing everything." The room was silent for a moment as the weight of his words sank in. The stakes had never been higher. Every move, every decision could mean the difference between victory and annihilation. The aliens may have had advanced technology, but they didn't understand the fierce determination of humanity. President Moore stood beside the general, her face a mask of unyielding resolve. The moment had come. There would be no turning back. Earth's first strike had to be swift, calculated, and devastating. The aliens might have the upper hand in technology, but humanity had something they didn't: courage and creativity. "We have one chance at this," President Moore said, her voice steady but sharp. "We strike hard, fast, and we strike first." The battle strategy had been set, and it was bold. It was a risk, but the risks were necessary. Humanity's first move would involve a combination of existing Earth technology, bolstered by the newly developed weapons and energy systems designed specifically to counter alien capabilities. The plan was simple: disable the alien fleet's ability to communicate and command their forces. The countdown to the strike began. Far from the chaos of Earth's command centers, in the cold, silent depths of space, the alien fleet remained unaware of the storm that was about to hit them. The invaders had not made a move since taking the human child, but their silence was a terrifying one. The waiting game had unnerved Earth's forces, but now it was time to make the first move. On Earth, a fleet of military vessels had been assembled. These ships, though not nearly as advanced as the alien ones, were equipped with the latest Earth weaponry. The newly created energy weapons, designed to disrupt alien shields and disable their systems, were now ready for use. The stakes could not have been higher. The moment arrived. Under the cover of darkness, Earth's forces launched their attack. The sky above Earth lit up with the glow of interstellar weapons as the first wave of human ships broke through the atmosphere. Their mission was clear: penetrate the alien fleet's defensive perimeter and disable their command ship. As the human vessels sped toward the alien ships, there was a tense silence on Earth. The military had given the order, and the world was watching. Would humanity's first strike be successful, or would it be a disastrous failure? In the heart of space, the human ships began their assault. Bright beams of energy erupted from the newly developed cannons, slicing through the dark vacuum of space toward the alien fleet. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't easy. The alien ships retaliated, firing their own advanced weapons, but the humans had anticipated their movements. It was a chaotic battle, but one thing was clear: Earth's forces were holding their ground. On Earth, the world watched as humanity's fate played out in the vast expanse of space. The news outlets broadcast the event live, the cameras capturing the moment when humanity made its move. It was a gamble, and for every success, there was a failure. For every alien ship disabled, there was another counterstrike. And yet, Earth's forces were proving they could hold their own. The battle was far from over, but the first wave of Earth's strike had struck a significant blow. The alien ships' communication systems were compromised, creating a momentary chaos among their ranks. In the midst of the confusion, Earth's forces pushed forward, targeting their command vessel. But it wasn't over yet. The aliens had underestimated the ferocity of humanity, but they were not without their own resources. As the battle raged on, the alien fleet began to regroup, sending reinforcements to the front lines. The war had only just begun, but Earth had sent a clear message: humanity was not to be taken lightly. The consequences of this battle would be far-reaching. But for now, Earth had proven that it would fight to protect its children, its people, and its future. The aliens may have come for a human child, but in doing so, they had awakened a force they had never considered: an entire planet, united and determined to stand its ground. The first strike was complete, and the world held its breath, waiting to see what the next move would be. Humanity had shown its strength, but the true test of their will had only just begun. Would Earth be able to maintain this momentum? Could they overcome the might of an alien empire, or would this first victory be fleeting? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain: Earth would not go down without a fight. The silence that followed Earth's first strike was deafening. The alien fleet, though momentarily disoriented by the surprise assault, quickly regained its composure. Their technological superiority allowed them to adapt rapidly, but the damage to their communication system was no small setback. It created a rift in their once perfect coordination, and the aliens knew they had underestimated the resilience of humanity. Across the vast expanse of space, the alien command ship, a towering behemoth of technology, flickered with signs of internal disarray. The crew of the ship scrambled to fix the disruptions caused by Earth's energy blasts. Their advanced systems had been momentarily overwhelmed, and it had taken them precious time to stabilize. But the alien leaders had no doubt that their advantage would soon be restored. "We have underestimated them." A harsh, cold voice spoke in the command center of the alien fleet. It was Wrath, the leader of the invasion force, known for his brutal efficiency and strategic mind. "Prepare for a counterattack. Initiate full fleet coordination. Do not allow them to gain any more ground." The alien fleet moved swiftly, their ships realigning to launch a retaliatory assault. Their ships, built for speed and power, quickly regrouped, and they set course toward Earth with alarming precision. The aliens had come to dominate, not to retreat, and they were not going to let humanity's first strike go unanswered. Back on Earth, the world watched with bated breath as the tension mounted. The initial success had given humanity a momentary sense of hope, but the looming fear of an alien retaliation quickly set in. Humanity had provoked the invaders, and now, the true scale of the coming war was beginning to unfold. General Marcus Holden stood before a map of Earth, his fingers tracing the alien fleet's movements as they surged forward again. He knew that the aliens would strike hard and fast. The question was, could Earth withstand the full force of the alien retaliation? "Prepare for the worst," Holden said, his voice firm but filled with concern. "They're coming in full force. We've made our mark, but they're not going to take this lightly." Earth's military had anticipated the possibility of an alien counterattack, and they were preparing for it. Every available fighter, every defensive measure was being put into place. But even with their new weapons and technology, the question remained, could humanity match the firepower of an entire alien fleet? In the command rooms of Earth's major military centers, the tension was palpable. Soldiers, engineers, and officers worked tirelessly, coordinating their efforts, preparing for the worst-case scenario. Earth had sent its message to the invaders. Humanity would fight, no matter the cost. But would the message be enough to deter the alien onslaught? As the alien fleet approached, President Moore stood in the war room, her eyes locked on the screen displaying the enemy's movements. She had watched as Earth's forces had made their first strike, and now, her country, her world, was bracing for the response. There was no turning back now. "We've proven that we can fight them," she said, her voice resolute. "But now we must be ready for what comes next. We cannot falter. The survival of our people depends on this moment." Across the globe, nations stood together, united by the common threat. The world's leaders had put aside their differences, recognizing that this was a war that could not be won by a single nation alone. Every human on Earth was now part of a global effort to survive, to protect their home, and to send a message to the invaders that they had made a grave mistake. In space, the aliens launched their retaliation. The first wave of alien ships darted forward with brutal efficiency, their weapons aimed at Earth's defenses. Their assault was swift, their firepower devastating. The human fleet, though determined, was no match for the overwhelming force of the invaders. Earth's ships were smaller, less advanced, but they fought with a fierceness that the aliens had not expected. The battle was fierce, with explosions lighting up the dark void of space as human and alien ships clashed. Earth's fleet, despite their technological disadvantages, held their ground. They fought with desperation, knowing that each battle could be their last. But the alien retaliation was relentless. The invaders' ships had far greater firepower, their weapons striking Earth's ships with deadly precision. Humanity's fleet was being torn apart by the overwhelming onslaught, and Earth's defenses were beginning to crumble. General Holden watched in disbelief as their ships, once a symbol of hope, were being obliterated before his eyes. The reality of the war was hitting harder than ever. The aliens had the upper hand, and it seemed that Earth's first strike had only delayed the inevitable. "We can't lose," Holden muttered under his breath, his mind racing for a solution. The humans had fought with everything they had, but it wasn't enough. President Moore stood tall, unwavering in the face of crisis. "We cannot let them win," she said firmly. "They think they can break us, but they have no idea who they are truly facing. Humanity has faced worse and come out stronger. We will not fall." The people of Earth had heard the news. They had seen their ships fall in the vast reaches of space, but they had also heard their leader's unwavering words. Humanity would not surrender. Not now, not ever. As the alien fleet pressed forward, Earth's forces regrouped. The world watched, anxious but determined. They had taken the first strike, and they would continue to fight. Humanity had not yet revealed all it was capable of. If the aliens thought they had seen the full extent of humanity's resolve, they were gravely mistaken. The fight for Earth's future had only just begun. And the aliens, though powerful, had just awakened the fury of a species determined to survive at all costs. As Earth's forces struggled to maintain their defenses against the overwhelming alien assault, a glimmer of hope arose from an unexpected source. Deep beneath the Earth's surface, in highly classified military facilities, a team of scientists had been working in secret for years. They had been preparing for the worst-case scenario, the invasion that no one had ever truly expected. And now, with the alien fleet bearing down on humanity, the time had come to unveil their hidden weapon. Dr. Evelyn Hart, the leading scientist on the project, stood in front of a massive console. The room around her was filled with advanced technology and nervous personnel. She had been part of a team tasked with developing a weapon that could turn the tide in humanity's favor, a weapon that could match the devastating power of the alien fleets. She had always known that this day would come, but now that it was here, the weight of the responsibility was heavier than ever. The weapon they had developed was unlike anything the universe had ever seen, a supercharged energy weapon capable of piercing even the strongest alien defenses. "Activate the weapon," Dr. Hart said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. With a series of commands, the facility's massive energy core hummed to life. The ground beneath them shook as the enormous weapon began to power up. The weapon was designed to focus the energy of Earth's core into a concentrated beam, capable of obliterating enemy ships in a single shot. It had been a long shot, a gamble, one that had never been tested on such a large scale. But the team had done everything in their power to ensure that it would work when humanity needed it the most. "Is it ready?" a voice from behind Dr. Hart asked. It was General Holden, who had arrived to oversee the weapon's deployment. His face was grim, but there was a flicker of hope in his eyes. "We're almost there," Dr. Hart replied, her fingers flying over the console. "The weapon is stable, but we have to be careful. If we fire it too soon, we could destroy more than just the alien ships. The energy levels are beyond anything we've ever tested." Holden nodded, his mind racing. The alien fleet was nearing Earth's atmosphere, and the world's military forces were being pushed to their breaking point. Earth had to strike back now, or the invaders would overrun them. The time for hesitation was over. "We have no choice," Holden said. "Fire it." Dr. Hart pressed the final command. A blinding flash of light erupted from the facility, and for a moment, everything went silent. The beam of concentrated energy shot up into space, cutting through the darkness like a spear. It raced toward the alien fleet at incredible speed, leaving a trail of light in its wake. The alien ships, though massive and powerful, were not prepared for the sheer force of the blast. The beam hit the lid ship of the alien fleet with a deafening explosion. The ship, once a symbol of the invaders' power, disintegrated into nothingness in an instant. It was as if it had never existed. The sheer force of the weapon had left no trace of the ship. The alien fleet froze for a moment, stunned by the destruction they had just witnessed. The survivors of the lead ship scattered in every direction, trying to regroup and recover from the unexpected blow. but the damage had already been done. The aliens now understood that humanity had something they hadn't counted on: the ability to turn the tide of battle in a single strike. Did it work? General Holden asked, his voice filled with a mixture of awe and disbelief. Dr. Hart watched the screen, her heart racing. "It worked," she said, her voice a quiet breath of relief. "We've just sent them a message they won't forget." The alien fleet, shaken by the unexpected turn of events, began to retreat. They had never faced a force like this before. For the first time since the invasion began, the aliens were on the defensive. Earth had proven that it could stand toe-to-toe with them. But the question remained: would this one strike be enough to stop the invasion, or would the aliens return with even more devastating force? Back on Earth, the world erupted in celebration. News outlets broadcasted the victory across the globe, showing the alien ships retreating in the wake of the massive energy beam. For the first time, humanity had the upper hand. The fear and uncertainty that had plagued the world were replaced with hope. The battle for Earth was far from over, but the tides had shifted. However, deep in the alien command center, Zrath, the leader of the invasion, stared at the images of the destruction. His face was unreadable, but his mind was working furiously. The weapon Earth had unleashed was unlike anything he had ever seen, and it had caught him completely off guard. "This changes everything," Zrath muttered under his breath. "We underestimated them." He turned to his most trusted officers, his eyes hard with determination. "We will retaliate. Prepare the fleet. This war is far from over." The war was entering a new phase, one where both sides were now fully aware of the power the other possessed. Earth had shown that it could strike back with unimaginable force, but the aliens were not the type to back down. The battle for Earth's survival had become even more intense, and both sides knew that only one could emerge victorious. As Earth's forces prepared for the next phase of the war, they knew that the aliens would not let this setback go unanswered. Humanity had made its mark, but the cost of victory would be steep. The battle for Earth was far from over, and both sides were preparing for what could be the final confrontation. The air on Earth had shifted. The victory from the hidden weapon, a weapon that sent a powerful message to the alien invaders, was only the beginning. Now, the stakes were higher than ever. The alien fleet, though temporarily stunned by humanity's surprising force, was regrouping for an even fiercer counterattack. The war had reached a critical turning point, and the next battle could determine whether Earth would remain standing or fall to the invaders. Across the globe, the militaries of Earth began to mobilize like never before. Governments set aside their differences, uniting for the common cause. Nations that once feared the alien invasion now stood together, ready to defend their home with everything they had. The strength of Earth's resolve had become undeniable. In the heart of Earth's command center, General Holden, Dr. Hart, and other military leaders watched the alien fleet on their screens, noting every movement. The shock from the first strike was wearing off, and the aliens were returning with vengeance in their eyes. They had no intention of backing down after being so humiliated. "We must strike before they get organized again," General Holden said. He was calm, but the pressure on him was immense. The entire future of humanity rested on their next move. Their fleet is retreating, but they'll be back, stronger than ever. We don't have much time. Dr. Hart nodded. Her mind raced, knowing the alien retaliation would be unlike anything Earth had seen. Their weapon was powerful, but could it match the aliens' full might? The plan to fight back was as daring as it was dangerous. Earth's military forces had to be coordinated and precise. One mistake, and they could all be wiped out in an instant. "We've gathered intelligence that the aliens are focusing their power on a centralized ship, a command vessel," Dr. Hart said, her voice low. "If we can target and destroy that ship, we may be able to cripple their entire fleet. But the risks are enormous. They've reinforced it with everything they have." The decision was clear. The next strike had to be decisive, but the gamble was immense. If they failed, Earth would be exposed to an even stronger alien retaliation. "We don't have a choice," Holden said, his eyes steely with determination. "We've got one shot at this." The plan was set into motion. Earth's military launched their most powerful strike force, combining the strength of air, sea, and space units. The assault would be a simultaneous attack on the alien command ship and its surrounding fleet. The goal was to overwhelm the aliens, to strike with such force that they couldn't respond in time. As Earth's forces moved into position, the air was thick with tension. Commanders, pilots, and soldiers alike were aware of the magnitude of the operation. They were fighting not only for their own survival, but for the survival of their entire species. Failure was not an option. In the skies above, the battle raged. Earth's fighter jets streaked through the atmosphere, launching missiles and firing lasers at the alien ships. The Earth forces had learned quickly from their earlier encounters and now had superior tactics to match the invaders. But the alien fleet, while thrown into disarray after the first blow, was no pushover. They fought back with brutal precision, their weapons devastating and relentless. As the final assault began, Holden's voice crackled over the communication system. "This is it. Target the command ship. We have to take them down now." The fleet of Earth's forces closed in on the heart of the alien fleet, the massive command ship looming in the distance. It was heavily protected, surrounded by dozens of smaller ships. But Earth's military had learned from their past experiences. They had studied the enemy's tactics and weaknesses and had come up with a strategy that could work. Firing the concentrated energy beam in 5, 4, 3. Dr. Hart counted down. Her eyes locked on the screen. Her fingers hovered over the console, ready to fire. The entire world seemed to hold its breath as the countdown reached 0. Now, a beam of searing light shot from Earth's hidden weapon, the same one that had previously taken down an alien flagship. This time, however, the target was even bigger, far more dangerous. The beam sliced through space with precision, hitting the alien command ship squarely in the center. The impact was catastrophic. The command ship's shields flickered for a moment before they collapsed under the sheer force of the beam. A massive explosion erupted, sending shockwaves through the alien fleet. For a moment, it seemed as if time stood still, the universe holding its breath in anticipation. The explosion sent fragments of the alien ship flying in all directions. The aliens, stunned and disoriented by the massive destruction, faltered. Their forces scattered in a frenzy, no longer able to function as a cohesive unit. Earth had landed a blow that might just be enough to turn the tide of the war. But the aliens weren't defeated yet. The retreating ships were regrouping, trying to find a way to regain control. Zrath, the alien leader, watched the chaos unfold before him. His face was a mixture of anger and fear. The humans had done the unthinkable. They had just crippled his most powerful asset. But Zrath wasn't one to give up easily. He knew they had only delayed the inevitable. A new strategy would be needed. "We will not be beaten by these creatures," Zrath growled to his commanders. "Prepare the counterattack. This war is far from over." Back on Earth, humanity had won a victory, but it was clear that the fight was not over. Both sides had tasted the true power of the other, and now they would push their forces to the limit. The final stand was yet to come, and Earth was ready to face whatever came next. The war for Earth's survival had entered its most dangerous phase, and only one side would emerge victorious.